Dumbass, you should have read the fine print. Aaron said it right into the microphone. 87 shareholders watching, cameras rolling, and my boss just called me a dumbass on stage while firing me. I didn't stand up. I didn't get angry. I just looked at him from my seat 7 rows back and said, "Before I go, could you ask Ray to read Clause 6D of my employment agreement into the record?" That's when their $40 million company disappeared. But let me back up. I'm Greg Thompson, 47 years old. Been writing code since before these kids knew what a modem was. This mess started building for months, but it all came together on one Tuesday morning in a hotel ballroom downtown. The thing about corporate terminations is they're usually quiet. Private office, HR present, security escort to your car. What Aaron did was different. He wanted theater. He wanted to make an example of the old guy who couldn't keep up with modern thinking. The Marriott ballroom smelled like burnt coffee and nervous money. Shareholders in wrinkled suits, board members checking phones, press from 3 trade publications. Everyone dressed like they were about to witness something important. I'd picked my seat carefully. 7 rows back, center section. Good sight lines, clear path to the exit. 2 decades of corporate meetings teach you positioning. Aaron took the stage at 9:15 sharp. He'd been practicing this presentation for weeks. Rolled sleeves, loosened tie, the casual authority look they teach in executive training programs. Today is about evolution, he started, clicking through slides full of growth projections and market positioning. About building tomorrow's solutions with next-generation thinking. Next generation, his favorite phrase. Aaron Bradley, 32 years old, MBA from somewhere expensive, 3 years with the company. The kind of guy who thinks experience is a liability and calls everything over 2 years old legacy debt. 20 minutes into his presentation, he got to the part about organizational optimization. Corporate speak for firing people. Every growing company reaches decision points, he said, advancing to a slide about leadership transition. Points where we need to align our team structure with our growth trajectory. The spotlight shifted. 87 pairs of eyes followed his gesture straight to me. Greg Thompson has been with us for many years, contributing to our foundational systems, Aaron continued. But as we scale and modernize, we need leadership that can think beyond traditional frameworks. Traditional frameworks. That's what he called the hospital management systems that kept 3 medical centers running 24/7. Systems I'd built over 6 years, handling everything from patient admissions to pharmacy integration to emergency room data flows. Polite applause started from the front rows, the kind you hear at retirement parties. "Greg, please stand so everyone can recognize your years of service." I stayed seated. Aaron chuckled into the microphone. "Come on, Greg, take a bow. You've done solid work. But it's time to let the next generation drive innovation." Then he delivered his prepared line, the one he'd probably been practicing in bathroom mirrors. "Besides, you should have read the fine print." The room laughed. Nervous corporate laughter, the kind that happens when executives make jokes that aren't quite jokes. That's when I stood up. "Before I go," I said, voice carrying to the back row, "could you ask Ray to read Clause 6D of my employment agreement into the record?" The laughter died. Aaron's practiced smile flickered like a bulb with loose wiring. Ray Martinez, our general counsel, was sitting front row with his laptop open. I watched him scroll through files, his face getting pale under the stage lights. "This isn't really the venue for contract discussions," Aaron tried, attempting to keep his presentation moving. "Clause 6D, Section 4, I said. 1 paragraph. Ray has the document." Ray cleared his throat. His voice, usually quiet in meetings, echoed through the ballroom sound system. Clause 6. D. Upon termination without cause, all intellectual property authored, designed, or materially contributed to by the employee shall revert to said employee, including but not limited to source code, system architecture, technical specifications, and related documentation. You could hear coffee cups hitting saucers, phones buzzing. Someone in the back whispered, "Is that enforceable?" Aaron's expression shifted from confident to confused to something approaching panic. "That's just boilerplate language. Legal formality." Ray shook his head. "It's signed, countersigned, and board approved. I have the documentation." "What does that mean exactly?" called someone from the investor section. Ray kept scrolling through his laptop. "It means Greg Thompson owns the intellectual property for our core hospital management systems, the anomaly detection protocols, the data pipeline architecture, and the failover systems." The room went dead quiet. That moment when everyone realizes they've been watching the wrong movie. 87 people thinking they came to see a retirement party, finding out they were at a bankruptcy hearing. "That can't be right," Aaron said, gripping the microphone. "We own the platform. The company built this. The employment records show Greg as principal architect on all core systems, Ray continued. Lead inventor on 4 patent applications. Primary author on the technical specifications that define our platform. I pulled out my phone and opened the app I'd prepared weeks ago. As of right now, I'm revoking all access tokens and API keys for systems I authored. 30 seconds. That's how long it took to execute the commands that locked down 24 years of infrastructure. Every hospital system, every data pipeline, every monitoring dashboard, gone. Not destroyed, just protected behind authentication that only I controlled. The screens behind Aaron flickered. His presentation slides disappeared, replaced by system dashboards showing red error messages across every service. Critical systems offline. Data flows terminated. 6 years of architecture going dark in real time. He actually did it, someone whispered. Aaron grabbed the microphone like a life preserver. This is sabotage. This is destruction of company property. No, Ray said, loud enough for everyone to hear. This is intellectual property protection. Greg owns these systems. He has the legal right to control access. Victor, our CTO, was typing frantically in the front row. He looked up with the expression of a man watching his house burn down. We're completely locked out. Every client integration is showing authentication errors. The ballroom erupted. Not shouting, but urgent whispers, phone calls, people leaving to make other phone calls. The investor section was having its own crisis meeting. Someone mentioned SEC disclosure requirements. I stayed calm, watched Aaron try to regain control of his presentation, watched board members huddle around Ray's laptop, watched reporters taking notes that would probably kill the company's IPO timeline. The hospital systems were designed to fail safely. Patient data stayed protected, emergency equipment remained online, critical care systems had backup power. But everything else, admissions, scheduling, billing, pharmacy orders, medical records, all of it depended on code I'd written. Code that was now displaying authentication-required messages across 3 medical centers. We can resolve this, Aaron tried one more time. Greg's been a valuable contributor. I'm sure we can work out some kind of arrangement. Arrangements cost money, I said, walking toward the front of the room. Especially emergency ones. How much? Called someone from the investor section. Every eye in the ballroom followed me. 2 decades in tech, I'd never had this many people pay attention to what I had to say. For immediate restoration while we negotiate permanent terms, $200,000 per month, paid in advance. The investor who'd asked laughed, but it wasn't happy. That's extortion. That's market rate, I said. You can always rebuild from scratch. Should only take 2 or 3 years, assuming you find someone who understands hospital regulatory compliance and real-time data processing at scale. Aaron stepped down from the stage, walked right up to me, close enough that I could see sweat through his expensive shirt. You're going to destroy everything we built. I built it, I said. You just took credit for it. The meeting ended in chaos. No more slides about the future. No closing remarks about innovation and growth. Just clusters of people with phones and laptops trying to calculate how much money they'd lost in the last 10 minutes. I walked out through the hotel lobby while they were still scrambling. Past the corporate banners, past the networking tables nobody was using anymore. Outside, downtown traffic moved like always. People going to work, dealing with their problems, not knowing that 3 hospitals were running on backup systems because one guy finally got tired of being invisible. But I should explain how we got here. How a regular Tuesday morning turned into corporate meltdown. This didn't happen overnight. The slow squeeze started 6 months ago. First sign was the meeting invite that didn't come. Monday morning architecture review, the one I'd been running for 4 years. My calendar stayed blank while everyone else got the new meeting link. We're streamlining the process, Aaron explained when I asked. Getting more stakeholders involved. Stakeholders apparently meant everyone except the guy who built what they were reviewing. Then it was 2 meetings I wasn't invited to. Then 5. Suddenly I was getting briefed on decisions made in rooms I used to own. Same week, my access to the investor dashboard timed out. First time in 6 years. Must be a permissions glitch, Aaron said, flashing that smile he practiced in mirrors. I'll get it to look at it. IT never looked at it. That's when Tyler Nash showed up, 26 years old, computer science degree, still warm from the printer. Aaron introduced him as my co-lead with the enthusiasm of a dad showing off his kid's first bicycle. You're going to love working with Tyler, Aaron said, actually patting the guy's shoulder. He brings innovative thinking to the team. Innovative thinking in our office meant hoodies with startup logos and asking if APIs were like USB ports for the internet. That's a real question Tyler asked me, in front of clients. The kid wasn't malicious, just inexperienced. But Aaron positioned him as the future while treating me like a museum exhibit. In team meetings, Tyler would call my anomaly detection system the error vacuum, and everyone would laugh. I'd spent 8 months building that system. It keeps emergency room data from getting lost when hospitals hit peak capacity. Lives depend on it running clean. Nobody asked me to explain how it worked. Here's what I learned about being 47 in tech. They don't tell you you're too old. They tell you you're not agile enough. Your solutions work, but they're not scalable for modern growth. You think systematically, but that's waterfall methodology now. Everything you've learned gets rebranded as technical debt. Meanwhile, Tyler's getting FaceTime with clients, demoing systems I architected like he invented them. Aaron's posing for photos in front of diagrams I drew, talking about our breakthrough approach to healthcare data management. Our approach, right. The thing about being invisible is you can hear everything. The jokes they don't edit, the conversations they forget you're listening to. Walking back from some culture council meeting, I caught Aaron talking to Ray from legal over coffee. We need a narrative shift before the investor update, Aaron was saying. Something about leadership transition, preferably with applause. I kept walking. Didn't stop, didn't make a scene, just filed it away with everything else I'd been collecting. Lisa, my wife, she's a nurse at the county clinic. 22 years dealing with systems that can't fail. She sees this differently than I do. Just fight it, she said one night over dinner. Go to HR, make noise. But HR writes the story after it's over. I wanted to control it while it was happening. So I started documenting everything. Not out of paranoia, just good engineering practice. Every commit with my handle on it. Every design review with my initials. Patent applications where my name appeared first. Email threads, meeting notes, performance reviews. People think keeping detailed records is excessive. But in 2019, during the company restructuring when everyone was panicking about stock options, I was the only one who actually read the contracts before signing. While everyone else rushed to get their underwater options repriced, I sat with Ray asking questions. What happens to intellectual property if someone gets terminated without cause? I asked. He pulled up the standard template. Company retains all IP created during employment. What if we modified that language? Ray looked puzzled. Modified how? What if IP authored by an employee reverts to them upon wrongful termination? He scratched his head. That's unusual but not illegal. Would need board approval for the deviation. Everyone was so focused on their stock prices that nobody paid attention to one guy asking for a weird contract clause. The board rubber-stamped it with all the other restructuring paperwork. Clause 6D, buried in Section 4 of the employment agreement. 4 paragraphs of legal language that basically said, fire me without cause, I keep the code I wrote. 23 people signed modified contracts that day. 22 wanted their stock options fixed. I wanted insurance. Fast forward to last week. Aaron's practicing his presentation in the conference room, working on his vision for tomorrow's speech. The same speech where he'd talk about honoring the past while embracing change. The same speech where my name wouldn't appear once, even though half the slides covered systems I designed. We're building the next chapter, he kept rehearsing. Dynamic leadership for dynamic challenges. Dynamic, his other favorite word. Monday night before the shareholder meeting, I sat at my kitchen table with Lisa and the kids. Emma's a freshman at State, costs us $28,000 a year. Tommy's a senior in high school, already got acceptance letters to programs that cost even more. You sure about this? Lisa asked. I pulled out a folder. 20 pages of documentation. Commit logs, patent filings, architecture diagrams. All time-stamped, all signed, all proving I'd built the foundation they were selling. I've been sure for 5 years, I said. Just took them this long to give me the legal justification. See, that's the thing about Clause 6D. It only triggered if they terminated me without cause. As long as they kept me around, kept paying me, kept pretending I was valuable, the clause stayed dormant. But the moment Aaron decided to make an example of me in front of shareholders, he activated the very trap I'd set 5 years earlier. The night before the summit, I went through my final checklist. Documentation archived, systems mapped, access tokens cataloged. I'd built those hospital systems to fail safely. Patient data protected, emergency equipment isolated, critical care systems on backup power. But everything else, admissions, scheduling, billing, pharmacy integration, all of it ran through code I owned. I didn't plan to destroy anything. I planned to protect what was mine. Tyler called me that night, nervous about his first big presentation. Any advice for tomorrow? He asked. Read your contracts, I said. Always read what you sign. He laughed. That's what lawyers are for. No, I said. Lawyers explain what you already signed. Reading it first is your job. He didn't understand. Most people don't. They think contracts are just paperwork, formalities you sign to get to the real work. But contracts define reality. They determine who owns what, who controls what, who gets credited for what. Aaron never read mine. He just assumed it was standard boilerplate, same as everyone else's. He was wrong about that. He was wrong about a lot of things. But he was about to find out. My phone started ringing before I reached the parking garage. Aaron, then Victor, then two numbers I didn't recognize. I let them all go to voicemail. The drive home took 20 minutes through normal Tuesday traffic. People heading to lunch meetings, running errands, living regular lives. None of them knowing that somewhere behind me, a boardroom full of executives was discovering what happens when you fire the guy who built your product. At home, I made coffee and opened my laptop. The emergency licensing agreement was already in my email, sent by Ray 18 minutes after I'd walked out of the hotel. Corporate lawyers move fast when systems are offline and clients are calling. I read it twice, made notes in the margins, and sent back a modified version. Ray called within the hour. "The board approved your terms," he said, sounding tired. "We need systems back online immediately." "I'll restore critical functions this afternoon," I said. "Full service resumes when the first payment clears my account." $200,000 per month, Ray confirmed. 3 months minimum, renewable by mutual agreement. "That's correct." Ray was quiet for a moment. "Greg, can I ask you something? How long have you been planning this?" "Since 2019, I said. When I realized Aaron would eventually push me out. Just took him 5 years to give me legal justification. He never read your contract, did he?" "Aaron doesn't read contracts," I said. "He pays lawyers to read them for him." "Too bad you weren't in the room when he decided to terminate me without cause." After we hung up, I pulled up the hospital monitoring systems. 3 medical centers, 847 beds, all showing red status indicators. Patient care systems were running on backup power, but everything else was locked down. Admissions couldn't process new patients. Pharmacy couldn't fill prescriptions. Billing couldn't submit insurance claims. I spent 2 hours carefully bringing critical systems back online. Patient safety first, then emergency services, then basic hospital operations. Everything else stayed locked until the money cleared. Tyler called around 3 p.m. The kid sounded younger than his 26 years. "Greg," he said. "I didn't know about the ownership thing. I never meant to take credit for your work." "I know," I said. "You're not the problem, Tyler. You're just someone who got put in an impossible situation. What happens to the team now?" "That depends on Aaron and the board," I said. "But if you're smart, you'll start documenting everything you build from now on. Don't let anyone else put their name on your code." "Are you coming back?" he asked, after this gets resolved. I looked around my kitchen. 2 decades of getting up at 5 a.m., checking systems, fixing problems, building infrastructure that mattered, all leading to one Tuesday morning when I finally got to explain how business actually works. "No," I said, "I don't think I am." The first payment cleared Thursday morning. 6 figures transferred from the company's emergency fund. By noon, I had all systems running normally. Hospital admissions flowing, pharmacy integrations working, billing systems processing insurance claims, everything humming like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. The news coverage started Friday. TechCrunch picked up the story first, the contract clause that brought down a healthcare unicorn. Other outlets followed, not sympathetic to me particularly, but fascinated by the legal mechanics. How one paragraph could transfer $40 million worth of intellectual property. Aaron lasted exactly 11 days after the shareholder meeting. The board moved him to a strategic advisory role, which is corporate speak for cleaning out your office while keeping your health insurance. They brought in an interim CEO, some consultant who specialized in crisis management. Victor stayed as CTO, but he was basically managing a house of cards, keeping licensed systems running while planning a complete rebuild. The technical audit results were brutal. 87% of their core platform traced back to code I'd written or systems I'd designed. The remaining 13% was mostly user interface components that couldn't function without my back-end architecture. The company's valuation dropped by 2/3 in the first month. Clients started asking uncomfortable questions about licensing costs and platform stability. Some switched to competitors rather than depend on technology they didn't own. Ray called me regularly during those 3 months, updating me on their rebuild progress, or lack of progress. "The new team doesn't understand the hospital compliance layers," he admitted during one call. "They keep trying to modernize systems that were built that way for regulatory reasons." "Healthcare isn't like other industries," I said. You can't just disrupt your way through FDA requirements and HIPAA regulations. I know. The board is starting to understand that too. By month 2, they'd burned through most of their engineering budget trying to reverse engineer my work. The replacement systems they built were slower, less reliable, and missing critical features that hospitals needed for daily operations. We might need to extend the licensing arrangement, Ray said during our monthly review call. That'll cost extra, I said. The initial terms were for emergency restoration. Long-term licensing is a different conversation. How much different? $800,000 annually. 3-year minimum, Ray sighed. I'll present it to the board. While they scrambled to rebuild, I was having different conversations. Coffee meetings with other engineers who'd been through similar situations. Tom Bradley, former CTO at a healthcare startup that got acquired by Microsoft. Rick Sullivan, architect who'd built electronic health records for Kaiser Permanente. Both had their own stories about being marginalized by executives who wanted to put their stamp on things. What if we did this ourselves? Tom asked during one meeting. Built something new, something clean, something we actually owned? With what money? Rick said. I pulled out my phone, showed them my bank statement. 3 months of licensing payments, plus what I'd saved over 2 decades in tech. With this money, I said, we incorporated MedCore Solutions 6 weeks later. Clean architecture, modern frameworks, built specifically for next-generation healthcare systems. More importantly, every engineer who worked with us owned their code. It was written into our founding documents, same language I'd negotiated in 2019. Our first client was a small hospital group in Oregon. They'd been using my old company's systems until the licensing costs became prohibitive. They wanted something more reliable and less expensive. We gave them both. Emma called from college that weekend. She'd seen the news coverage about the company's financial troubles. Dad, did you really cost them $40 million? I didn't cost them anything, I said. I just made them pay for what they were already using. Are you in trouble? No, sweetheart. Your tuition's still paid. Actually, it's paid better than before. The licensing arrangement with my old company lasted exactly 3 years. 36 months of steady income while we built MedCore from 3 guys with laptops into a real healthcare technology firm. They never renewed. Instead, they announced plans to migrate completely to a new platform built by an offshore development team. The transition took 18 months and cost them most of their remaining clients. Aaron called me once during those 3 years, late on a Thursday after what sounded like several drinks. You destroyed everything we built, he said. I protected what I built, I said. There's a difference. The company failed because of you. The company failed because you fired the guy who built your product, I said. That's not my fault, Aaron. That's yours, he hung up. I never heard from him again. The old company shut down last spring. Couldn't compete with newer firms that actually understood healthcare technology. Most of their remaining engineers found jobs elsewhere. A few came to work for us. Tyler was one of them. Joined MedCore in month 10, along with 3 other developers who wanted to work somewhere that valued technical expertise over corporate politics. The kid turned out fine once he got proper mentorship and stopped trying to reinvent systems that already worked. I should have listened to you about reading contracts, he told me during his first week. Most people learn that lesson eventually, I said. You're just learning it young. 3 years is a long time in tech, long enough to build something new, long enough to prove that experience matters, long enough to watch your old company disappear in the rearview mirror. MedCore Solutions has 43 employees now, offices in 2 states, clients across 18 others. We're profitable, growing steadily, and every engineer who works for us owns their code. It's written into our founding documents, same language I negotiated back in 2019. Tom Bradley handles business development. Rick Sullivan leads our compliance team. I focus on architecture and engineering culture. The 3 of us learned the hard way that protecting your work isn't paranoia, it's professional responsibility. The difference between our company and my old one isn't just ownership structure. It's respect. When someone builds something that works, their name goes on it. When we present to clients, the engineers who design the systems do the talking. When trade publications want quotes about our technology, they interview the people who actually wrote the code. Revolutionary concept, apparently. Lisa still works at the county clinic, still deals with systems that can't fail. She understands what we're building better than most investors. You're not just writing software, she told me last month. You're building trust. That's what hospitals need most. Emma graduated state last spring, got accepted to 3 medical school programs. Tommy's a sophomore at UC Davis studying computer engineering. Both kids understand that Dad's not just a programmer anymore. I'm running a company that proves technical expertise has value, that experience deserves recognition. The old company officially shut down 14 months ago. Their offshore replacement platform never worked properly. Too many shortcuts, too little understanding of healthcare regulations. Clients migrated to competitors who actually knew what they were doing. I heard through industry contacts that Aaron tried starting his own consulting firm. Strategic Technology Advisory Services or something equally vague. Didn't last 6 months. Turns out executives don't want advice from someone whose last project was firing the guy who built his company's core product. Victor found work at a medical device manufacturer in San Diego. We exchange emails occasionally. Professional updates, industry gossip. He never blamed me for what happened. If anything, he seemed relieved when the whole mess finally ended. I was tired of explaining systems I didn't understand, he admitted during our last conversation. At least now I'm building things I can actually troubleshoot. Ray Martinez joined a law firm that specializes in intellectual property. He sends me a Christmas card every year, usually with a note about reading contracts more carefully. Last year's card included a newspaper clipping about a software engineer in Seattle who'd negotiated similar ownership terms. Your influence spreading, he wrote in the margin. The industry learned from what happened. Employment contracts got more restrictive. Companies started paying closer attention to IP clauses. Law firms began offering seminars on protecting corporate assets from departing employees. But engineers learned too. More of them read what they sign now. More of them document their contributions. More of them understand that code has value beyond salary and stock options. Tyler's been with Medcore for 2 years now. He's a solid engineer when he's not trying to impress anyone. Builds clean systems, writes clear documentation, mentors junior developers. The kid who once asked if APIs were like USB ports now leads our integration team. I tell new hires your story, he mentioned during our quarterly review. Not to scare them, but to make them understand why we do things differently here. What do you tell them? That good engineering takes time, experience matters, and when someone builds something that works, you respect that. Also read your contracts. I laughed. Good lesson. The hospital systems I built 6 years ago are still running, by the way. Different company owns the licenses now, after they acquired the assets when my old firm dissolved. The new owners contacted me last year, wanted consulting help with upgrades and maintenance. I declined politely. Medcore was building next-generation solutions by then. Better architecture, cleaner code, designed for the regulatory environment that's coming rather than the one that used to exist. But it felt good knowing those systems were still keeping hospitals running, still processing patient admissions, still managing pharmacy orders, still protecting data when emergencies hit. Code outlasts the companies that use it if it's built right. People ask me if I do anything differently. The answer is still no. Sometimes you have to protect what you've built. Sometimes contracts actually matter. Sometimes reading the fine print isn't just legal caution. It's career survival. The story gets told differently depending on who's telling it. Some people call it revenge. Others say it was corporate sabotage. A few describe it as workplace justice. I call it business. Aaron fired me without cause, triggering a clause I'd negotiated 5 years earlier. I exercised my legal rights to protect intellectual property I owned. The company chose to pay licensing fees rather than rebuild from scratch. When the licenses expired, they tried rebuilding anyway and failed. That's not revenge. That's just what happens when you don't understand what you're buying, selling, or throwing away. The tech industry moves fast. New frameworks every month, new platforms every quarter, new paradigms every year. But some things don't change. Good engineering still takes time. Experience still has value. Code still belongs to whoever wrote it, unless they sign it away. And contracts still matter, especially the parts that nobody thinks they'll ever need. Last month, a senior engineer at a startup in Austin reached out through LinkedIn. Similar situation to mine, marginalized by management, excluded from decisions, watching younger colleagues get credit for her architecture work. She'd been at the company 8 years, built their core platform from nothing. "I've been reading about what you did," she wrote. "Got any advice?" I thought about it for a day before responding. Remembered sitting in Ray's office 5 years ago, asking theoretical questions about intellectual property clauses. Remembered Aaron's confident smile when he fired me on stage. Remembered the moment that confidence cracked when he realized what he'd actually done. "Read your employment agreement," I wrote back. "All of it. If you don't like what you see, negotiate changes while you still have leverage. And document everything you build. Not for revenge, just for accuracy." She replied an hour later. "Already started. The cycle continues." Companies forget that engineers built their products. Engineers forget to protect their work. Contracts get signed without reading. Credit gets taken without permission. But more people are paying attention now. More engineers understand that their code has value. More companies realize that institutional knowledge walks out the door when you fire the wrong person. That's progress, I suppose. I'm 50 now, running a healthcare technology firm that treats technical expertise as an asset rather than a liability. We're building systems that will outlast the companies that use them, same as I did 20 years ago. The difference is now I own what I build, and I still read every contract, every clause, every paragraph of fine print that crosses my desk. Not because I'm paranoid, but because words matter. Terms matter. Understanding what you're agreeing to matters. Aaron learned that the hard way. So did his company, his investors, his board of directors. Me? I learned it the smart way, 5 years early, one clause at a time, in a conference room with a lawyer who thought I was asking theoretical questions. Sometimes the best revenge is just being right, and sometimes reading the fine print is the most important thing you'll ever do.